What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today we're continuing our way too early regular season record prediction series by talking about the NFC South. That means we're talking about the Saints, the Panthers, the Bucks, as well as the Atlanta Falcons. So excited to bring this video your way. Let me hear your NFC South record predictions down below. Who comes away with this division crown? I really do think all four of these teams, there's a pathway to be able to do it. Maybe it's a little bit slimmer for the team at the bottom, which we'll get to. But it really wouldn't surprise me whoever comes away with this division. So let me hear your early hot takes and record predictions down below in the comments section. But we're going to start by talking about the record overall. Then we're going to flip over the depth chart so you can talk about the points of the roster I like, where there maybe are some weaknesses. And then we'll go ahead and show each game of the schedule. But don't focus on, oh, you have the Saints, losing week 6. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. You're crazy. Focus more on the record because there's going to be some weird games, some upsets we can't account for. But all in all, I think to start us off, the New Orleans Saints are a 10-7 team, and we are going to go in the order I think this division plays out from top to bottom. So I do have the Saints winning the division, the 4 seed in the NFC playoffs. But let's go ahead and switch over and talk about this team's roster as a whole. And, to start, if Michael Thomas is healthy, this pass-catching core is a really fun one. Chris Olave could take a step forward and maybe work his way into the top 10 wide receiver conversation. Pair him up with a great possession guy like Thomas. Rashid Shaheed's a big play waiting to happen. Great gadget weapon, end-around guy. So I think there's a lot of pieces I like there. And even A.T. Perry, to get him in the, 6th, 7th round maybe? I love his, big body, field stretching ability. So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a nice little contributor even in his rookie year. And then Bryan Edwards, nice depth there. It's not too much to talk about there. And then, tight end, we'll kind of skip over the offensive line for a second. Foster Moreau, if Juwan Johnson builds off of the end of last year where he had 7 of his 8 touchdowns in the last half the year, if he builds off of that, okay, he could be that nice tight end option moving forward. But if Johnson doesn't emerge, Foster Moreau is not a bad player. He was the number 2 tight end behind Darren Waller, who, when he's healthy, one of the best tight ends in football. And when he wasn't healthy, Foster Moreau was more than serviceable. So I can totally see where Johnson, if he disappoints or gets hurt, Foster Moreau is still a solid tight end to have out on the field. Then we get to the offensive line. This is where I kind of have some problems with the Saints roster, and this is going to irritate a lot of Saints fans during my draft coverage. A lot of New Orleans fans hated when I gave them any sort of offensive line depth, even if it was late 3rd round, get to the 4th, whatever. People just didn't like it, which, we'll see how that plays out. Cesar Ruiz obviously did not have his 5th-year option picked up. Trevor Penning, big year 2 for him. Can he prove that he was worth being a first-rounder? A lot, like the size, a lot of athleticism, but now we just need to see the play kind of match that. Andres Pete, I think, is a little overrated, hot take, but I guess, even just looking at his PFF grades, I guess they would agree, so it's not too much of a hot take. Also battled a ton of injuries, getting old. I think next offseason you got to start finding a potential replacement for Pete. Eric McCoy, solid, serviceable. He's nothing too much to talk about there. Ruiz obviously didn't have the 5th-year option picked up, and Nick Salvaderi, first pick of the 4th round. Wouldn't be surprised. Some people liked him at tackle, but I could see the appeal of him at guard. I was kind of indifferent based off, it just comes down to what roster and what your situation is. Moving him inside the guard could definitely be a move, and maybe he is your Andres Pete replacement, but also maybe he's long-term your Cesar Ruiz replacement as well. Ryan Ramczyk, though, that's the gold star here on this offensive line. He's still playing at a super high level, and I love Ryan Ramczyk, one of the best right tackles in football. Derek Carr is certainly an upgrade over Andy Dalton, and I do think he'll be a better fit in that New Orleans offense versus him having to adjust and learn a brand new, complicated offense like Josh McDaniels. So I think this is going to be a bounce back year for him. Also helps playing in a dome, right? You're not going to have to deal with all the weather and I know the Raiders also play in a dome, but you look at the rest of the division, LA, good weather, but you play outside. Kansas City, tough place to play. That's outside. And then Denver, really hard place to play outside. This division, Atlanta, inside. Tampa Bay, outside of rain, you're going to probably have some pretty good conditions. And Carolina, kind of the same thing. So half the division essentially in a dome, one more than he could say in the AFC West. So, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it is certainly good to have him back into a dome. And I think this offense is just a little bit better fit for him. And I could argue, last year in Las Vegas, it was Devontae Adams, Matt Collins' breakout year, but maybe there's even more offensive firepower here in New Orleans. Also, I guess the Raiders, you got to talk about Josh Jacobs had a breakout year, so maybe it's even, but that's certainly, even if it's even, not a bad thing for Derek Carr. Alvin Kamara, we'll see what the suspension, all that sort of plays out. I'm not, the expert there, so I'm not going to really comment on that, but when he's playing, he's still one of the best running backs in football, so obviously a huge asset there for New Orleans. Jamal Williams for pennies on the dollar. Can't believe they got that. And then Kendre Miller in the 3rd round. I liked that addition as well. Then we get over the defense and, obviously, head coach Dennis Allen, good defensive-minded head coach. So he's a big part of this. Cameron Jordan still playing pretty good football. do we eventually hit a wall? This could be the year, or he keeps, kind of churning through. Obviously, a little wait and see there. Nathan Shepard, Kalen Saunders, don't really love either one of those guys on the interior, and I really do hope we get to see Brian Brzee earlier, and hopefully as a week 1 starter. Love the ability, love the athleticism, and #1 recruit coming out of high school for a reason. I think he just needs to find one position because Clemson moving around a ton, and we just need to see him avoid injuries / family tragedies, which there's not much you can do to avoid those. And I think him playing through that at times last year in Clemson speaks to his character. So I think as long as he's healthy, he'll get his reps and he'll become a really nice player there for that interior defensive line. And then you get to the other edge spot, Isaiah Foskey plus Peyton Turner. Those two guys are going to have to step up and form a really nice rotation. And Foskey will obviously rotate in for Jordan as well, but they need that pass rush trio to get back to where it was when they had Trey Hendrickson towards the end of his time in NOLA. Linebacking room, still pretty solid. Zach Bond doesn't play a whole lot, which is kind of disappointing, but Demario Davis, just like wine, gets better with age. And then Pete Warner, pretty nice player too, and better than I thought he would be coming out of Ohio State. So that's a big win there for New Orleans as well. Then you get to the secondary, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, like both those guys, that's fine, assuming they stay healthy. Bradley Roby is a nickel corner, don't mind that. And then Marshall Lattimore, when he's healthy, could be a little up and down, but I still think he's got the talent to be a top 10 corner in a given week. And then that #2 corner spot, Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, I don't think they've been as good as some Saints fans want me to believe, and that's totally fine. It's up to your own interpretation, I suppose. But yeah, I think they could definitely be better. But the good news is the young players, so there's totally a curve there to be for these guys to take a step forward and progress even more. So there is an opportunity for that #2 cornerback spot to go from a problem in my eyes in New Orleans to a strength on the roster, and it wouldn't shock me whatsoever. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the schedule now for the New Orleans Saints. 10-7 again, 3-3 in the division. That's kind of the main headline, talking points. Like them more than I like the Titans right now. I have them splitting with Carolina. I'll give them that win over Green Bay. I think I can just trust Derek Carr a little bit more than Jordan Love, but also that's partially sample size. I have a whole career of Carr to go off of versus a handful of snaps for Jordan Love. And then I have them losing that New England game. We talked about that in the AFC East video. That's a true coin toss, 50-50 game. Can Belichick or Dennis Allen, can one of those two, stymie the opposing quarterback, create some bad decisions? Again, that one's the true coin toss in my estimation. Have them losing to Jacksonville, but beating the Colts. Maybe that's one you could flip, wouldn't surprise me. Or they lose both those games and 9-8 still gets you the division crown. That's not entirely impossible either. If Demario Davis is healthy and Pete Warner is healthy, I really want to see how that linebacking core hold up against Justin Fields in that rushing attack in Chicago. I think that could be interesting. But assuming health, I think that Saints defense can be good enough to win that game. Plus, like the offensive firepower, the Bears defense is still a little bit of a work in progress. I think Minnesota's got a little too much firepower for even saying that out loud right now, I don't know. It's in Minnesota. I could see the Saints win that game. Really, I almost want to think of that as a 50-50 coin toss. I think that Saints offense really can go toe-to-toe with Minnesota. So now I'm thinking about it. Maybe I kind of want to change my mind here. I'll keep it as a Minnesota win because they're at home. But I like the Saints defense more. I like Brian Flores. Maybe he's a better defensive play caller. But talent-wise, give me New Orleans in that defense. So can Minnesota's offense outshine that Saints offense? I don't know if I can really count on that. So I don't know. I might have to change that one once we get to the NFC North. I have them splitting with Atlanta, so that explains why the bye week loss there. They're both coming off a bye week there, so it's not too much of an advantage for one side or the other. Same thing with the Lions. I talked about the Vikings. I like the Saints' firepower, but I think the Lions are going to be another level this year. I really think that could be the best offense in the league. And then have them losing to Carolina. We talked about that split already. Have them beating the Giants. I think they're just a slightly better team. Like Carr more than I like Daniel Jones. I think they're better than the Rams. Have them losing the Bucs because I can't give the Bucs, no wins and 17 losses, as challenging as that was to do. And then the win the last week of the year against Atlanta. So that's the New Orleans Saints. I have them winning the division. Let's go ahead and move on to our next team, which is the Atlanta Falcons. I have them going 8-9, 4-2 in the division. I do think this is going to be a pretty solid squad. And 8-9, I think, it's probably good enough to keep Arthur Smith his job, especially if they go 8-9 without Desmond Ridder being like a superstar. Like if Desmond Ridder looks more the same of those 4 weeks where it's like, yeah, it's just not it. Like he's not a franchise guy. Maybe you like him as a backup. If they finish 8-9 with Desmond Ridder, metaphorically speaking, treading water, I think that earns him another opportunity to take another swing of the bat at quarterback and try to find that big time upgrade, which would be interesting because if they part ways with Ritter, are they going to do it through the draft, or are they just going to be like, hey, Kirk Cousins is a free agent and we can win with him? Ryan Tannehill's a free agent now, and I'm going to partner up with him again. Like, I'm really interested to see what route they decide to take. Hopefully through the draft, because upside to me is king. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at this team's depth chart. And man, I love the pass catchers this squad has. Drake London was in that, tier 1 of my 2022 NFL wide receiver rankings. Him, Garrett Wilson, and Jameson Williams, to me, all had potential to be wide receiver 1s, and in retrospect, kind of wish I put Chris Olave in there, but you got to appreciate your misses just as much as your wins. Matt Collins, like that sign to another basketball player, basically put in that wide receiver room, and of course Kyle Pitts too, tight end wide receiver hybrid. Scotty Miller, a lot of speed, but I don't really think Scotty Miller's all that. That point aside, honestly, let's play Kyle Pitts in the slot. I'm here for that. The offensive line has become a huge strength, especially under that Arthur Smith run blocking scheme. Jake Matthews, they just re-signed Caleb McGarry, so I like the tackle duo. Chris Lindstrom is emerging as one of the best guards in football. Matt Bertrand, I think, is a fantastic fit there at guard. There was a lot of talk late in draft season about moving him from tackle to guard, and honestly, Atlanta's the perfect place for him to go because he's so good getting out on the move, plays with a ton of strength, and as long as he's moving forward, when guys get to his chest and move him back, his strength evaporates. It's gone. So this is going to be an offense that plays to his strengths in a big way. Plus, moving to guard, I think, might be better for him pass protection wise too. But I don't know. Those interior guys might give him fits. We'll have to wait and see. And then, center position, maybe they can do a little bit better, but Davis Dahlman's not going to lose you, a whole lot of games. So Desmond Ritter's obviously the linchpin of this all. And if Ritter takes a step forward and becomes a really nice player in year 2, this team could go 10-7, 11-6 maybe, because they're going to have a really efficient run game, and Ritter might add on top of that, but he needs to grow as a passer because those 4 games last year, it wasn't all that pretty. Bijan Robinson, their first-round pick, best running back in the class, and awesome receiver. Let's play him in the slot. If we're, I'm here for that as well. I legitimately think he could take 25 to 30% of his snaps playing slot wide receiver. I'm totally content with that. I think he's got the skill set to do that. So obviously they drafted a fantastic football player. The question is going to be at the end of the 4 years or 5 years to an attack on the 5th-year option, did they get enough value out of him drafting running back at 8 overall versus going corner or maybe taking a swing of the bat at edge or something along those lines? Only time will tell that story, but they definitely drafted one hell of a football player. Then on the defensive side, they really put this together with, I'm going to say Band-Aids, but I don't mean it as negative as that sounds. Calais Campbell, really nice signing. I mean, low risk, high upside type of move for at least 1 year. David Onyemata, I think that's a 2-year contract, so same kind of deal. Hopefully both those guys shore up that run defense that has been very bad. And also hopefully it frees up Grady Jarrett to don't even worry about it. I mean, we want you to stop the run, but Grady Jarrett, when he's focused on being a pass rusher, is one of the best interior defensive linemen from a pass rushing perspective in the league. So hopefully, that help that they get in the run defense side makes him that much more efficient as a pass rusher. Bud Dupree, kind of a low risk signing, 1 year, $5 million. If it doesn't work, cool, we'll just part ways at next offseason. Or maybe he plays better than $5 billion. Lorenzo Carter, better athlete, kind of almost a QB spy specialist more than I'd say he's a pass rusher, but that's fine. Caden Ellis, I wouldn't even be surprised if Ellis ends up playing a little bit more on the edge. They poach him from New Orleans. And then Troy Anderson, this running back turned linebacker who's 6'3", 245, but also runs 4.42, just a freaky athlete and almost kind of like what we talk about Trayvon Walker playing edge. Troy Anderson's almost kind of like that for linebacker. It's kind of insane, but comes from a small school, so who knows. But this could be his breakout season, and I would love to see that. I would totally be here for a Troy Anderson breakout. You get to the secondary, AJ Terrell, down year last year, but I still think he's one of the best up-and-coming corners in football. On the other side, Jeff Okudah, kind of like the rest of the moves he made on the defensive side, low risk, big-time potential payoff. So love that move. If it doesn't work out, you could just turn it over to Trey Flowers, Mike Hughes, who maybe they're okay, maybe they're not great, but I think it's still worth taking a shot on Okudah. And then Clark Phillips, I hope to see him become the every down nickel corner. Him and Richie Grant, I could see where it's 1st and 10 potential running situation. You want to play Grant in that nickel role like they did last year, but then once you get in your passing situations, you rotate Clark Phillips in to play the slot. I just worry about the arm length, so I don't think he'll stick on the outside. I do think Clark Phillips is going to end up being a nickel, but in passing situations, he's going to be a really awesome nickel. Not a bad tackler either, so maybe he plays on those rundowns as well. And then Jesse Bates, that's the huge, big ticket, where a lot of their moves on defense was, okay, we're going to get an okay option here. We're going to patch that up. We're going to raise the floor with a Bud Dupree. We're going to try to steal some potential upside with Jeff Okudah in that trade. Jesse Bates was the splash move, where it's okay, all those pieces kind of work because, boom, that's a huge upgrade. And he's a fantastic fit for their new defense with Ryan Nielsen taking over as the DC. So He's a fantastic fit and a player they just have not had there at free safety. And I think he's going to be an awesome addition. So now let's take a look at this team's schedule. Once I get there we go. But 8-9, you could easily convince me 9-8. And honestly, with injuries to New Orleans, this is probably the next team I would say is going to win the division. I don't know. It's close between them and Carolina. I go back and forth just because I like Bryce Young more than I like Desmond Ridder. But speaking of Carolina, have them as a series split with Atlanta taking the win in week 1. Them versus Green Bay. I don't know. Green Bay's run defense, I think, will be okay. So maybe that slows down the Atlanta rushing, attack. And then it comes down to Jordan Love versus Desmond Ridder. And, oh my gosh, close my eyes, throw a dart at the dartboard. I don't know who's going to be better in that game. So it could be a true 50-50 game with the Packers slow down that rushing attack. I think the Lions offense can be too much for Atlanta to keep up with. Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence over Desmond Ridder any day of the week pretty comfortably. Have them beating Houston there. Again, Houston's run defense, I talked about this in the NFC South video. I think that could be their biggest weakness throughout this first year of D'Amico Ryans in Houston. I think that plays right in the hands of Atlanta. I'll give Washington this win, because I can't have Washington go 0-17, right? Like, this is a true 50-50 game. And I like that pass rush there in Washington. I like that defense all in all. If Sam Howell's somewhat competent, I think there's enough offensive firepower there. This comes down to Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder. Which one of these non-first round quarterbacks in year 2 takes that step forward? If Howell plays better than Ridder, Washington's going to win this game on the road. If Ridder outplays Howell, well, guess what? Atlanta's going to win at home. And I know that's kind of a duh statement, but I really do think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to there in week 6. Give them the win over Tampa Bay. And I do think, did I have them split with the Bucs? I might have, but we'll get to that once I had them sweep the Tampa Bay Bucs. I don't know. That's tricky for me because I think Tampa Bay's going to have a pretty good run defense. So I could totally see where Tampa wins at least one of those games, just because they take away Bijan on that rushing attack, and it's Desmond Ridder. But Desmond Ridder, Baker Mayfield, again, I just don't know what Baker Mayfield is going to be. We'll talk about the Bucs here in a little bit. But that's the 4-2 division record. It's a sweep for Atlanta against Tampa Bay. I like Tennessee's run defense a lot. I think they can take away that Bijan rushing attack, and then it's Tannehill versus Ridder, which that's Ridder maybe takes a step forward, but Tannehill right now is just a better player. And also, maybe this is like Arthur Smith scene of Tannehill still got it. Maybe next offseason, that's the move they make. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever. I like the passing attack from Minnesota, so I'll give the Vikings the win there. They being Atlanta, they're better than Arizona. Split with the Saints. The Jets are just better. I like that passing attack a whole lot more. Carolina, that's a split. Chicago versus Atlanta. That was a really interesting game late in the year, not because either one of those teams was going to make the playoffs, but I was like, man, Chicago should dominate this game on the ground. I mean, Justin Fields looked good rushing the ball. But now that we see this Chicago offense with, kind of a more put together offensive line, you get that number 1 wide receiver in TJ Moore. I think the Bears get that revenge for that loss last year against Atlanta. But can the Bears defense, come up with a rushing defense that's going to slow down Atlanta? I don't know, TBD, but we'll have to see what type of year TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds ultimately have. Those two linebackers need to be big in that game, and if they play up to that money, I think they'll beat Atlanta. If they don't, they disappoint. Then maybe Atlanta steals that one on the road. Atlanta versus Indianapolis week 16 to backtrack 1 week. That's a true 50-50 game. I think I might like the Colts defense just a little bit more, but I don't know. I kind of feel like the Falcons got it a little bit more when it comes to I don't know. Jesse Bates versus Shaq Leonard, kind of feel like they're both superstars, just at different positions. I don't know. Desmond Ridder versus Anthony Richardson. Flip a coin. I don't know who was going to win that game, but I'll give Atlanta the W at home, and they finished the year where they lost to the New Orleans Saints. So, got the Atlanta Falcons going 8-9, and now we'll go ahead and transition and start talking about the Carolina Panthers, who I'm going 7-10. And again, if this team goes 8-9 or 9-8, wouldn't surprise me, but for me to see that, I think it's going to take a breakout season for one of their wide receivers, which segues into looking at their roster. So also we got to talk about Frank Reich coming in as the new head coach. That's a big-time addition. Jero Evero, one of the best defensive coordinators on the upswing, in my opinion, in the league. So love that signing. If you're going to lose Steve Wilkes and the impact he had on that defense, Jero Evero is the guy to replace that. And also, this is a great opportunity for him to do it one more year as a DC, do it in a different environment with a different, personnel grouping, and prove that, I'm like one of the best defensive minds in football. Give me a head coaching job, basically. All right, let's talk about this roster now. Wide receivers where I need to see someone step up. Whether it's Jonathan Mingo, their second-round pick, they took it 40th overall. to me, he kind of was the right wide receiver because I could see Mingo winning at all three levels. He's really good yak. He's got the long speed, got the size to win down the field, good enough route runner to win over the middle of the field and between the hashes. So I think Mingo, by the end of the year, will end up being this team's number one wide receiver. But for right now, it does feel like it's Terrence Marshall Jr., inside-out flexibility, good size. Just haven't seen the production really follow suit. DJ Chark, nice vertical guy. That's about all you're going to get out of him when he's healthy. And then Adam Thielen, I'm sorry, I think he's washed. But in the slot, he could be fine just because you're limiting how much athleticism you're needing out of him, right? The offensive line 2 years ago was one of the biggest weaknesses I think this team had on the roster, maybe the biggest. And now I think it might be their biggest strength, potentially. Ikem Ekwonu was great each week that he played last year. He just got better and better and better. Bradley Bozeman, great under the radar re-signing there at center. He played really well for them last year. I think Brady Christensen could be in for a breakout or at least a step forward towards being above average there at left guard. Austin Corbett, Chandler Zavala. Wouldn't be surprised if Zavala ends up winning that job at right guard. Like the value they got with him in the fourth round. And then Taylor Moton, who's one of the better right tackles in football. So all in all, that's a really solid offensive line. Number one overall pick was, Bryce Young. A lot of this, weighs onto his shoulders. Can a 5'10", 185 pound quarterback, can that work? Can that play at the NFL level? We're gonna find out. I think he's so good, both with pocket feel, pocket maneuverability, touch, accuracy. He's got enough arm strength. He's got it above the shoulders. I think he's got enough of those intangibles and feel for the game in general to be able to overcome that size. So again, he was the number one prospect for me in this year's draft class. So love that addition, and I love that the Panthers took that swing of the bat to move up from 9 to 1. Also want to talk about tight ends here. Hayden Hurst, he's fine. Ian Thomas, he's okay. Tommy Tremble, good blocker, could be a good enough outlet guy because he's a solid athlete. Nothing special there. And then at running back, they spent a decent amount of money on Miles Sanders, who I think is just your typical B-level running back. He's fine, he's good, but he's not special enough to change your complexion of your roster, but that's fine. And then Chuba Hubbard, I think, is a nice little number 2 option there. Then we get to the defense, which is going to be run by Ejiro Evero, and I can't wait to see this unit because I think it can be one of the best units in football. Defensive line, Derek Brown's coming off a really nice year, but other than that, not really in love with what they have there on that, between, Williams, Shai Tuttle, and Derek Brown. Brown's definitely the headline name. Then you get to edge. Brian Burns, one of my favorite players in the league. But they're going to need someone else on the other side to step up, whether it's DJ Johnson, who they drafted in the 3rd round, or it's Yetira Gross-Matos finally figuring out, or someone else. Then you get to the inside linebacker spot. They were able to keep Shaq Thompson. Love that, pairing him up with Frankie Luvu again. Luvu, for the first 6 weeks of last year, he was in that defensive player of the year, kind of conversation. Not like comeback player of the year. No, defensive player of the year. He was just making plays left, right, and center. So to have him and Thompson running it back there on the inside, love to see that. And then we get to the cornerback spot. J.C. Horn, to me, when he's healthy, is one of the best corners in football. He just misses so much time that, it's hard to make that declaration like we can with Pat Surtain or like we can with Sauce Gardner. But if this is the year where Horn plays 17 games, I think he works his way easily in that top 10 cornerback conversation. Pair him up with Dante Jackson. I think they can do better there at that number 2 corner spot, but it's not the end of the world. And ultimately, the C.J. Henderson, low risk, potential high reward play with that trade hasn't worked out. He's just nothing that great. And then Keith Taylor, I don't think he's all that special either. And then Jeremy Chin. I am fascinated to see how Ejiro Evero uses Jeremy Chin. Is this nickel corner, strong safety hybrid, kind of that new age Isaiah Simmons-esque type of role. Can Ejiro Evero maximize Jeremy Chin? And to me, it's going to be Chin either has a huge season, absolute, type of Pro Bowl year, or he disappoints, and it's like, man, he's such a freaky athlete and such a crazy, unique build. He should be better than he plays. I think it's going to be big-time payoff or a big-time disappointment type of year for Jeremy Chin. Not much there in the middle, so can't wait to see what that plays out as. In the safety room, Von Bell was a great, strong safety addition. All the headlines talk about Jesse Bates, but Von Bell is a big loss to Cincinnati. I think that's a big-time add in Carolina. I think Xavier Woods played that free safety. He's solid, middle-of-the-road, average, over-the-top free safety, so I don't mind them bringing him back. So that's kind of where I stand on this roster. Let's go ahead and take a look at their schedule. And 3-3 division record, that means to split across the board with all their division rivals. Like that passing attack in Seattle a little bit more. Can trust those wide receivers to win more consistently. And whoever that wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 ends up being, assuming it's going to be JSN in the slot and assuming Lockett is healthy in Seattle, those two are going to have really favorable matchups against, I think Dante Jackson and, I guess Jeremy Chin. So I think that's going to be ultimately where Seattle wins that game. Not so much DK Metcalf, but those other 2 pass catchers. I like the firepower in Minnesota a little bit more. Love those wide receivers. That 1-2 punch with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, to me, outshines certainly Jonathan Mingo and Terrence Marshall Jr., however, ends up playing as that 1-2. Same thing with Detroit. Same thing with Miami. I just think there's more offensive firepower. Yes, Carolina's a good defense, but ultimately comes down to putting points on the board, and I don't think Carolina's going to have enough to keep up. But then we get to the bye week. And I think this could be when we start to see things turn around for Carolina. This is when Jonathan Mingo becomes clear-cut number one guy. And I think Bryce Young really hits stride and is fully ingrained as that, QB of the future. They beat, Houston. They beat Indianapolis. They go on this nice little run through the AFC South, basically. Them in Chicago, Thursday night game, maybe Chicago at home, a little bit of a travel there for Carolina, but I'll just trust Bryce Young to be able to win this game through the air. But at the same time, also, I don't love that Chicago defense. I think there's pieces I like, but as a whole, I'm not crazy about it. I could see that Carolina defense on the inverse slowing down Chicago's offense, and that becomes like a Thursday night, your typical Thursday night game. It feels like every Thursday night game finishes like 17-14, 19-17, or whatever. I could totally see where Carolina wins that one on the road in a game like that. Like Dallas, assuming health, I like that roster just entirely more than Carolina. Then I have the Panthers beating the Titans. Obviously, the split with the Bucks. I don't know. That might end up being a sweep. I just don't know what to do with Tampa Bay, but we're going to talk about them in a minute. And then we get the split with New Orleans, Atlanta. Again, I'm giving them the latter half of the season wins because I do think Carolina might be able to turn the corner late in the season. Bryce Young versus Jordan Love, it's just tricky. I think there's more offensive firepower with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and even a Jaden Reed and the two tight ends Green Bay added. So I'll go with that over, what I think Bryce Young might be trying to scrap together with Jonathan Mingo and then the rest of that crew in Carolina. So give Green Bay the edge, but I don't know. Jordan Love might throw that game away too. So we just don't know yet. Then losing to Jacksonville, I think that's a better team, and then beating Tampa Bay Week 18. So 7-10, first year with Frank Reich and Bryce Young. I think that would be a really optimistic start to that new era there in Carolina. And I know Panthers fans, there's a lot of people who want to see me predict them to win the division. Only one team can do that. But I do think Carolina, that's a solid start, 7-10. I wouldn't be surprised then if we're talking about them next offseason as potentially the front runners in the NFC South. But anyways, the once front runners of the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4-13, 2-4 in the division. I just don't know what to do with this team. So let's just go ahead and talk about this team's roster because there's a lot to like other than the quarterback position. And on top of a roster that I generally like other than QB, also the change at offensive coordinator, look, I know Byron Leftwich was the OC when they won a Super Bowl, but I think that's a lot more Bruce Arians and Tom Brady credit than Byron Leftwich, if I'm honest. And I mean, the fact that he's not getting their OC job kind of feels, it kind of indicates that. And last year, that offense was abysmal. So I think they had to make a change, even if Byron Leftwich was the engineer of that Super Bowl run. It just wasn't working last year. But man, you look at the wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage. There are 25 teams who would love to have that as their trio. They would love to have that. And then there's even more depth even behind that. And then you look at the tight end position off of it. I think Cade Otton could have a really nice year and have a breakout season. I'm not saying he's going to become a top 5 tight end in the league, but he could become one of those guys that's like, he's in that top 12 to 15 conversation pretty comfortably. The offensive line's going through some retools, but Chris Wirfs, I think, is going to be just fine making the move to left tackle. I think he's going to prove to be one of the best left tackles in football. Matt Filer, love that ad there at left guard. Had a rough year last year in Los Angeles, but that's really the one bad year he's had of the last 5 to 6 years. So I expect him to have a bounce back season. Get Ryan Jensen back off the injury at center. I think Cody Mock's actually a great fit there at right guard. Him or Nick Leverett. I could see maybe Leverett starts the year as a starter and then Mock shuffles in, but I kind of like the idea of getting Mock some playing time and seeing what he can do at guard, especially blocking on the move. He's such a good athlete, so good on the move. I want to see them tap into that. And then Luke Gedeke is probably the big question mark, really that right side of the offensive line. If it is Mock and Gedeke, that's when where teams stack their edge rushers, put their best interior rusher. Right, they're going to take advantage and try to exploit that right side of the offensive line. But I like Gedeke as a prospect, really good athlete out of Central Michigan. I think he'll be okay. I feel better about banking on Bernard Ryman in Indianapolis as the other Central Michigan tackle drafted that same draft class, but I also still believe in Gedeke and what he could potentially be. And I think, we're certainly going to find out this year at right tackle, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's at least average this upcoming season. And then, we're talking about the running backs before we talk QBs, Rashad Vaughn's fine, Chase Edmonds, fine, Rashad White, okay, it's an okay committee. There's nothing special there. Maybe Rashad White has that breakout season, but right now I'm not over the moon about any of those guys. And then QB. Whether it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, I'm really concerned about what it's going to look like this year in Tampa Bay. Baker's had those moments, had those flashes, and there was a time where while he was in Cleveland, it's like, dude, yes, this was the best use of the number 1 overall pick they could have had. I've always said Josh Allen should be the number 1 pick, but Baker won him a playoff game, right? Like there's a lot of, after that playoff win against the Steelers, there were so many Browns fans that were like, yes, Baker's our guy. He gave us a playoff win. We have not been able to say that for so long. and then it just all fell apart. And, part of it's him trying to play through an injury, and he's diminishing his own value. But then last year, he looks bad in Carolina, has the cool comeback win for the Rams, but even outside of that, wasn't all that special. He's just not the same guy that he was pre-shoulder injury or labrum tear. I think it was a labrum tear. And because of that, as much as I do like that roster and I like that offense, a new OC and Baker Mayfield, I just don't know how much confidence that really inspires for me. And then if it's not Baker, Kyle Trask is just such an unknown commodity that I don't know. He's a statue, man, and I don't know. With that offensive line, especially the right side, that could be problematic for Trask. So, yeah, I'm just really concerned about that quarterback position. And if those two guys are who I think they are, as much as I do like the roster around them, 4-13 does feel kind of about right. We get to the defense, Logan Hall, second-year guy. They drafted him in the second round in 2022. Vita Vea, when he's on his game, might be the best nose tackle in football. Kalijah Kancey, love adding that offensive pass rush firepower right next to Vea, who's a great run stopper. Kind of hides weaknesses for Kancey, and especially for a team that, since that Super Bowl run, that pass rush has just steadily gotten worse and worse and worse. And that takes us into adding Kalijah Kancey. Plus, I think year 3 is going to be the breakout season for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I've been saying that for a couple months now. I think year 3 is when we can see that athleticism, great body build, and the progress he's made as a player as a whole from year 1 to year 2, that leap he took. I think he's going to take a similar leap here in year 3, and he's going to be the guy that kind of carries the torch from Shaq Barrett. He was the big signing, and he was the go-to guy that got double-digit sacks. I think Joe Tryon-Shoyinka takes over that kind of role, which they needed, because again, that pass rush has slowly but surely gotten worse and worse year over year since they won a Super Bowl. So adding Kancey plus the breakout season from Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, I think gets that pass rush closer to where it was in that Super Bowl run. Not quite there, but back closer towards it. Middle linebacker situation still really, really good. Levante David, 1 year, $7 million. That's going to be one of the best value contracts in the league, I think, because I still think Levante David playing at a high level. Devin White's boom or bust. It's been a little more bust than boom since the Super Bowl, but at the same time, flip a coin, he could have the best season of his career, and all of it could break his way, and they're all boom plays, right? Like, that's what you're getting. Unless they trade him, because there was that trade request put in earlier this offseason. So maybe there's a deal made during training camp or something. But for right now, still like that linebacker tandem. Shaq Barrett, I just don't know what to expect off the Achilles injury. I don't think Shaq Barrett's going to be even what he was last year, pre-injury. Like, I think Shaq Barrett is at the end of his career pretty much. But I've been proven wrong before, so I hope to be, again, because I do like Shaq Barrett as a player. But I think we're at the end of the road there for Shaq. And then we get to the secondary, and I still really like the secondary, man. Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. 2 corners that hit the market, and I was dying for the Steelers to sign them. If you didn't know, I'm a Steelers fan. I was like, please, Pittsburgh, make a move. Let's add this big-time, huge name cornerback. We need it. And they both end up re-signing, and both, honestly, on modest contracts given the position they play. So good work there from Jason Light, the Bucs GM. And then Antoine Winfield Jr., great safety. Ryan Neal coming off a huge season in Seattle, 1-year contract. Surprised he stayed on the market as long as he did. And I love Tampa Bay taking advantage of it and then scooping him up on a really solid value deal. And then in the slot, a little bit of a turnover there with Sean Murphy-Bunting being gone, but he's been... he hasn't been playing his best football there in the nickel versus where he was his first year as a rookie playing on the outside. So might be just time for an actual turnover there anyways. And maybe we see more Antoine Winfield Jr. there in the nickel anyways. But there's the roster. And again, you get the gist of it. I like a lot of what's there, but I'm still unsure about what's going to happen at OC, and also like Todd Bowles as a head coach. I think he's a great DC, but as a head coach, some of the game management last year was a little iffy. And then Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask. So we'll run through this pretty quick, because also, like, I want to take into account here, I am measuring strength of schedule, which I forgot to mention off top, but Saints actually have the easiest schedule in the NFL per Sharp Analytics. The Falcons have the second easiest. The Bucs have the 17th, and then the Panthers, I skipped over them, have the 4th easiest. So the Bucs, of the 4 teams, have the hardest schedule. It's still like right around middle of the pack, but per Sharp Analytics, they have the hardest schedule of anybody. And yeah, I see it. I mean, Minnesota in the non-division game. Also, I want to note 2-4 in the division. They get swept by one squad, but 2 of their 4 wins come in division. But yeah, Minnesota, just a better team. Philadelphia, just a better team. And then we get to the Saints. I have them splitting with New Orleans bye week, but yeah, sorry. I'll trust that Detroit offense. And even though Jared Goff's not like spectacular, I know Ben Johnson's able to produce with them. So yeah, give me the Lions there. Week 6. Falcons again, split. Actually, I think I gave Falcons both those wins. We'll come back to it. But Buffalo, just a better team. San Francisco, just a better team. Maybe you could flip the Houston game, but I don't know. One team's on the upswing, one team's kind of on the decline because their quarterback situations. Give me Houston to win at home. And same thing with Indianapolis. Yeah, maybe Todd Bowles gives rookie quarterback some troubles, but And also, like, Tampa Bay's run defense, I think, is going to be pretty solid. So maybe you flip that one, but that's a true 50-50 coin toss. And yeah, I'll just give the Colts that one at home. Plus, 5-12 felt about right for Indianapolis. And then you get towards the end of the season. The reason I decided to give them the win over Green Bay, maybe that's like the one weird, surprising upset game I put in here. I just think Todd Bowles is going to give Jordan Love some fits. Like, I could see that being a 3-pick game for Jordan Love. So I'm leaning on a pretty big if or asterisk there. So who knows if I'll even be right, but I could see that game where the Bucs defense wins it out over Green Bay. Jacksonville's better, split with the Saints, and a split with Carolina. So, yeah, 4-13, which I don't know. Some Bucs fans are going to be like, you're crazy. The roster outside of Baker is great. We're going to be 8-9, 9-8 in that playoff mix. And again, like I said off top of the video, all four of these teams, I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up winning the division. I think there's a pathway for all of them. I just think the Bucs, because the QB position is a little bit more narrow than the other three. But you could even say the same thing about Desmond Ridder in Atlanta if you're not anticipating a second-year jump from him. And then there's going to be some Bucs fans who look at this and they're like, 4-13, sweet, awesome. Let's get that in top 3 pick. Let's draft Drake May. Let's draft Caleb Williams or maybe Michael Penix Jr. Who knows how good a year he has this upcoming season at UW. So I don't know. I feel like if you're a Bucs fan, let me know where you stand on that. Do you want a bad season, tank to the top 3 pick, or do you think this team is going to be competitive and make a run for the division? Love to hear your thoughts down below. And generally, if you watch this video, I want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who do you think wins the NFC South? And let me hear some record predictions for all 4 of these squads. I want to hear your hot takes and early predictions down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more of this series and football content in general in your life. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.